Glad you joined me again for another classic film review. Now, since the earliest days of cinema, filmmakers have sourced great stories from authors, poets and playwrights. Some of those adaptations were as good or even better than the original work. I've chosen this film because it is an adaptation of one of the most important and influential novels ever written, and because the adaptation underlines and enhances the power of the original story. The film is the 1956 version of 1984. The film was adapted from the 1949 novel by George Orwell, and it embraces its ideas about the effects of pervasive observation and social control on individuals. Orwell's 1984 is widely considered to be a disturbing prediction of the present day. It is hard to argue that we don't live in something very like the dystopia that Orwell warned us about. In 1953, screenwriter William Templeton adapted Orwell's novel for American television and was later engaged to write the big screen adaptation. In 1954, Peter Cushing, Donald Pleasance and Andre Morel starred in BBC's made-for-TV adaptation, which was extremely popular with British audiences.
This is one man's alarmed vision of the future. A future which he felt might, with such dangerous ease, be brought about.
And is credited with convincing the financiers to support the 1956 feature film production. Now, given that America's CIA had secretly funded the earlier film adaptation of Orwell's Animal Farm and was a secret financier on this film, I suspect the commercial potential of 1984 was not their biggest concern. Many people are likely more familiar with the 1984 version of this story. It was a very good film that chose to portray the environment of that world as run down and the people as malnourished, unhealthy and impoverished, but somehow thankful for, rather than resigned to, their fate. This version of the film captures Orwell's dystopian world in a more subtle and more disturbing way. Because the environment looks so normal and everyday, for 1956 at least, it actually leaves you feeling more hopeless. If we remained reasonably comfortable, it seems more plausible that the control exerted by a Big Brother type power would remain unnoticed, and their hold on power and the control that they have over people would be easier to establish and to maintain. That, I think, was the message Orwell had in mind, which also reinforces the idea that those are the times we are currently in, experiencing them in comfort, oblivious to how we are being manipulated. The star of this film is Edmond O'Brien. He appeared in more than 100 films from the 1940s to the 1970s, often playing character parts. His most notable films include The Barefoot Contessa, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, The Killers, White Heat, DOA, The Hitchhiker, Julius Caesar, The Girl Can't Help It, The Man Who Shot Liberty Balance, Fantastic Voyage, The Wild Bunch, and this film in which he puts in a great performance. O'Brien was at his best in roles where he played the individual battling somewhat vainly against forces much bigger and more powerful than him. That makes him a good fit for the character of Winston Smith. Michael Redgrave played the character O'Brien from the original novel, but due to Edmond O'Brien's casting, the character's name was changed to O'Connor. Now, interestingly, as a young man, Redgrave had been very left-wing and ironically was on the list of communists and communist sympathisers that George Orwell passed over to the British government some years earlier. The film was given an X certificate by the British Board of Film Censors and premiered at the Warner Theatre in Leicester Square on March 1st, 1956, running only for a disappointing 2 weeks. For the US market, 1984 was distributed on a double feature with British science fiction film The Gamma People, where unsurprisingly it had limited success. The New York Times reviewer A.H. Weller called this film adaptation a stark, sober and thoughtful, if not altogether persuasive film. He said the film's director and scenarists have adapted the book freely, but they have retained its essential spirit and ideas. The Boston Globe reviewer said that the film had the same sense of bleak horror and black apprehension that Orwell developed when freedom was allowed to die. Now, this film was made with two different endings, one for a British audience and one for an American audience. They are a little different. A lot of people criticised the British version for veering too far away from Orwell's vision of the story, or the story that he told in the novel. Now, when you search out this particular film, you may come across one or other of the versions. And without giving away the end of the film, I'll leave it up to you as to which you prefer. Reasons to watch this film are because it's adapted from one of the most important pieces of 20th century literature. It's a story that's very contemporary and also has been very influential and continues to be very influential as well. I think it's a very interesting interpretation of the story, different from what you might be familiar if you've seen the more recent version of 1984. But also, great performances by especially the central character, Edmond O'Brien. So what I'll encourage you to do is, go to the website, find the link, click on it, watch this film, or as always, see what you think, and we'd love you to come back and provide some commentary about what you thought about the film and whether you'd encourage other people to check it out as well. So enjoy viewing it, and then come back and see us again soon for another Classic Films review. See you later.